Have you ever wondered what it takes to become a great therapist? I think it's a question a lot of us ask ourselves. But strangely enough, I'm not sure it has been a guiding light in terms of how we organize our trainings. Too often we go to sort of one-off trainings where we hear a lot of research and it's very intellectual, but it's not actually designed to help us grow to become better clinicians. So that when we go back in our therapy office on Monday morning, we've really integrated whatever we learned and are ready to give it to our clients. So this is a really frustrating experience. And I know for myself and through talking to my colleagues and students, how common it is to feel a bit stuck and like we're plateauing. And that is not our fault. The truth is, there is a body of research about what it takes to be a great therapist, what great therapists do differently, how they practice, how they use their time. But that has not translated into how we actually teach students. Instead, our training is often very intellectual and not embodied and not focused enough on the skills we actually need. And sometimes I think the problem is that we allow these sort of assumptions about excellence, what I think of as like the myths, to get in the way. And I want to talk to you a little bit later about those myths, because in my mind, it's really time we pivot as a field into deeper types of learning. We've poured millions of dollars into manualized treatment, but we have spent almost no money figuring out how to help therapists develop their ability to do those techniques. And that's really amazing if you think about it, because any technique is only going to be as effective as a therapist doing it. What research in our field has done would be more akin to music teachers getting around and debating which song to play, rather than how to play it well, or even how to train their students to play it well. Or really, even just teaching the basic skills that might lay the foundation for being able to even play a song, like learning scales or learning chords. This kind of idea of very carefully and meticulously sort of going through a method of training is not rocket science. And the fact that our field hasn't really tackled this issue does a big disservice to our clients. But also, I think it does a big disservice to therapists, because most therapists, if not all, are really wanting to do their best. They're needing support and looking for chances to grow so that they can best serve their clients. So our field, which is all about studying human development, there's a way in which we could perhaps stretch to include therapist development in that circle. My name is Dr. Tori Olds, and I wanted to tell you just a bit about why over the last 6 years, I've really been focusing on this question of what it takes for therapists to grow. What does it take to be a great therapist? And then secondly, and just as importantly, what does it take to become a great therapist? Because while the first question really looks at, what does a great therapist do? What does an effective therapist do? How do they handle when a client's being resistant? What kind of things do they say? How are they non-defensive? Really, what are the skills? But secondly, how do we step into that? Because that is an equally important question. So the first thing I noticed as I was really approaching these two questions and trying to answer them was how many assumptions I had, sort of without even questioning them, around expertise that really proved, and through my research and my experience, to be wrong. So I've begun thinking of those as sort of the myths around becoming a great therapist. And I'd like to share those with you. And I would actually like to show you what I think of the truths, like what is the roadmap to becoming an excellent therapist? But first, I'd like to dispel some of the ideas we have, kind of like clearing the cobwebs away so that then we can move forward. So myth number 1, therapists improve over time because it is experience that makes the difference. Interestingly, the research does not seem to support this notion. Therapists do not improve over time. In fact, on average, only on average, but on average, we get just slightly worse the longer we're in practice. So why might that be? My understanding is that instead of growing and tweaking, that the reason why we don't necessarily improve is because we're actually just grooving in bad habits. There's a great quote that some people have 30 years experience and some people have the same experience for 30 years. So all that being said, It doesn't mean that we can't improve over time. Of course, that's what I'm trying to really work with in myself and with my students, is figuring out how can we reliably and more effectively grow. But it is also true, on the other hand, that we can't just assume that more years in practice will naturally lead to better results. So now to myth number 2. Finding the best technique or theory and learning it well will make you an excellent therapist. So after years of research, the verdict is out on this one. And it says that what theory you use doesn't really matter. In fact, how well you do that theory in terms of really fidelity to the model doesn't seem to matter either. So they've taken experts in these different theories and had them watch videotapes of clinicians working and really rating, how well did they follow the model or stick to the manual or that kind of thing. And even rating on that by an expert of how well did that person do the theory doesn't predict clinical outcomes. So really all the efforts and money we've put into manualizing treatment seems to be something of an epic fail. The truth is, our field hasn't improved in its outcomes over the last 50 years. That might be because we have focused so much on kind of competing between theories rather than focusing on the person of the therapist and how to help them grow. And looking at something that the research does really seem to point to as being important to outcomes, which are called common factors. Those factors that are important in treatment, but are really common across theoretical orientations. Now, that being said, that leads us to myth number 3. Because many people have started to hear about common factors, but through their, hearing about it, a sort of different myth, sort of opposite myth has emerged. So we have the people that really buy into myth number 2, and then those that buy into myth number 3. And myth number 3 is theory doesn't matter at all. The only thing that makes the difference is the therapeutic alliance. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. So first, with theory doesn't matter. While the common factors research does suggest that which theory you use may not make a difference in outcomes, having some theory does really matter. And secondly, while common factors are important, they go way beyond just the therapeutic alliance, which just happens to be the most famous. But truthfully, there's all sorts of common factors. The installation of hope, the ability to help the client confront what they've been avoiding and feel a sense of mastery and take ownership of that, mastery experience. So there's all sorts of common factors that go beyond just the therapeutic alliance. So as we're talking about the therapeutic alliance, that leads us to myth number 4. The therapeutic alliance is all about warmth and empathy. Well, warmth and empathy do contribute to the therapeutic alliance, but alliance has been studied really in a lot of detail, and really they found 3 ingredients, 3 elements that contribute to the alliance, and warmth is only one of them. The other is agreement on the goals of therapy, and the third is agreement on how as a team we're going to reach those goals. So now into myth number 5, confidence is really important in being an effective therapist. Well, this is partly true, and the nuance of that is really captured in this famous article around this topic. And the title of the article is, Love Yourself as a Person, Doubt Yourself as a Therapist. And so it seems to be, the research seems to show, that it's actually the combination of 2 sort of counter qualities. One, really valuing ourselves as a person, kind of believing and having confidence in our innate value and goodness and capacity, but also sort of doubting ourselves as a therapist. In other words, just having at least, you could say, some humility, really always questioning and wondering, am I doing good enough with this client? Is there anything I could be doing better? Whereas when people are both kind of love themselves and sort of think, oh yeah, I'm great as a therapist, actually that combination doesn't predict outcomes, as well as this humility piece. It seems it's really important not to be arrogant and just assume that we're doing a great job. And now finally to the last myth, myth number 6. You can't teach someone how to be a great therapist because it is based on innate sort of inborn qualities or strengths. The truth is, just like any other area of expertise, therapy is based on micro skills that can be taught and learned through, a lot of practice. Now, it is true that there is something called facilitative interpersonal skills, as conceptualized and researched by Tim Anderson. And his lab did find that you could test someone on their facilitative or rate them on their facilitative interpersonal skills before a student, before they've even seen their first client. And then a few years later, test their outcomes and predict how they're doing based on their skills, their interpersonal skills. But like anything else, interpersonal skills can be taught and learned. And I know this from personal experience because I was a very shy and anxious kid. And even kind of going into high school and college, I was a little less anxious, but I was also still not really open and that warm. And I really took it as a sort of mission to learn how to be more open-hearted and expressive and warm. I kind of templated off my sister on that one because she's the epitome of that, just naturally. But for me, it wasn't natural, and yet it was something I could really develop through conscious intention. So the old adage does, in this case, seem really true, that practice makes perfect. But then, of course, that leads to the question, how do therapists practice? And thinking about this kind of allowed me to do really two things. One, as I mentioned, I created a roadmap of the skills and the micro skills that I think are important in therapist development. And that was really through doing a lot of research, not only, through working with my students and in our clinic, but really delving into the research. And then two, thinking about, well, how do we practice? If these are the skills, how do we practice them? And that sort of led me to stumble along a field called deliberate practice. So in the next video, I would like to talk to you about both of those things. Sort of go over the roadmap and really look at what are the areas where we can most fruitfully put our attention if we want to grow, based on what the research says. And two, talk about deliberate practice, which is not specific to psychology. It's really the study of expertise, what kind of efforts and what is the format for practicing any kind of skill you're wanting to develop that's only just now beginning to be incorporated into our field in some really exciting ways. So you don't want to miss that. Thanks for watching, and I'm really interested in any of your thoughts or reactions around these 6 myths. Take care. Thanks so much for watching. This video is actually part of a promo for an online course my sister and I are launching. And in this course, we'll really delve into these skill areas that I was just mentioning, while also using deliberate practice exercise to help you embody them. So if you'd like to watch the second video in this series, where I talk about deliberate practice and why it is such a groundbreaking approach to clinical training, feel free to click on the link in the description box below. That will also be how you will learn more about the course. So I hope to see you in the next video and of course in the course as well. Thanks.